Today I'm sitting down with one of my good friends, someone I admire professionally and personally, Dr. Dave Dickey. Dave works in national security as a Senior Intelligence Analyst for Peraton, where he helps guide teams operating in high-stakes, high-pressure environments. He's a father, a husband, a coach, and someone who understands what it means to carry a lot all at once, emotionally, mentally, and operationally. But the reason he's here today is because of the journey that shaped his new book, The Stoic Cheat Sheet, a book he wrote while navigating more than 2 years of caregiving and hospice for his father. In that season of intense responsibility, balancing family, work, caregiving, and personal resilience, Dave turned to Stoicism, not as a philosophy to study, but as a toolkit to survive and eventually to transform. Today we're talking about strength, presence, pressure, caregiving, grief, and the kind of inner steadiness that can carry us through even the hardest chapters. Dave's story is a reminder that even in moments where life feels impossible, we still have choices in our reactions, our mindset, and the meaning we give to everything along the way. You said London. I was at Heathrow and I bought The Alchemist, which I had never read, exactly a year ago almost. And I read it from London to the Middle East in like a 5-hour flight. And it's like those things you get to do when you travel alone that you would never do with kids.
Movies. I don't watch movies. I never have time to watch movies. I don't control my TV at home. It's always, whatever Netflix. Ugh, I'm embarrassed to say they watch Netflix, but they watch these crazy Netflix shows and I barely watch anything.
I know. I don't even know how to turn my TV on, to be honest. And I work in TV, the irony.
Well, it's probably healthier.
It is, for sure. Well, Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
We're talking about our kids and Netflix, and our kids are the reason we met.
That's right.
Our kids are friends. I'm friends with your wife, Arsina, and we have a mutual group. And you wrote a book.
I did.
Which I'm really excited to talk about. It's a very ancient concept and wisdom, but I think you illustrate it beautifully and very applicable to things that we're going through in life.
Yeah, I mean, the impetus for the book obviously was, my father becoming ill after, a hip surgery and trying to find balance in life, right? Being in a place where you've got to balance all these different responsibilities and just finding a practical way to find balance, and having these ancient tools from Stoicism was, critical for me to kind of get through what became a caretaking situation with my father in hospice over, 2.5 years of this, while at the same time raising kids, trying to be present for them, coaching their sports, being a good husband at home, and then being, excelling at work. There's a lot to do and a lot to balance. So the concepts in Stoicism, I think, are, foundational to us finding perspective and balance.
Mm-hmm. And when did you first come across this wisdom?
Good question. So I've loved philosophy going back to undergrad. I loved foreign policy and national security stuff even more, and I saw like a career path there. I've liked that probably since like 4th grade. I've just have a passion for it. But in undergrad, I loved philosophy, but it was more like Enlightenment thinkers, which are great, and I really enjoyed that. I think back in 2018, when my mom passed, and I had a couple of buddies also pass, kind of under less dramatic circumstances than what happened with my father recently. I'm this kind of persistently positive guy. I have a very positive outlook, but when those things happen, you have these kind of existential kind of thoughts, and you go down these different rabbit holes. So during those times, I was interested in like, what is our purpose, and like, why are we here? What's driving us? And I found this Stoic philosophy, and I got pretty much obsessed with it. So since that time, I've been reading and absorbing anything and everything I could associated with it. So all the classics, back to the founders with like Zeno and Cleanthes and these guys, to the more modern, Seneca, Epictetus. Like, everybody is into Marcus Aurelius and Meditations and all these things, and they're excellent. They're really, really good. And Ryan Holiday and who's really popularized it and all those things. So that's when I really got into it. But then I think over this last 2.5 years is when I really needed to lean into it. And that's when pretty much every morning as I was, taking care of my dad, there'd be two things I would do. I would kind of read everything I get my hands on about his illness. He had basically a sepsis infection and an acute kidney injury, an AKI. So I became like pretty expert in that. So I would consume everything I could to either try to beat this thing and eventually just find comfort. What can I do to make him comfortable as we kind of reach the end of the journey on this thing? But then the meditation part of it. So really reading deeply everything that I had this big library of all these Stoic philosophers, and even like some coaching stuff I was reading was applicable. So I would take these things and I would synthesize them with kind of my analytical mind, the way I do things, and I would whittle these things down into the most practical things that I could use. And that eventually became this short checklist of, here are the 10 things that I need to get centered in the morning to make sure that I'm going to stay present, with him and be there for him. When that's done, I need to move on and take care of my kids or do whatever and be the best I can be in all those situations. So, in that journey, and during that caretaking experience, there's so many, I guess, sleepless nights. It's kind of like, I told my friend, it's kind of like having a toddler, but a lot sadder. Like you love this person dearly. Like, this is the best guy in the world. Like he was, everything to me. And you both know this isn't going to go well. You're up in the middle of the night, you're changing, you're feeding, you're giving medicines, you're doing all these things. It's very similar. And you're sleep deprived. There's not much time. You've got a job. You've got to get the kids to practice. You've got to coach. You've got to go do these things. So that's what happened, is I turned this thing into this short checklist that I could just reference whenever I needed it.
Right. I mean, you said a lot there. I think when you're caring for someone and that the end, or, you kind of can anticipate the outcome, I think it's natural to get into a mode where you think, well, what else can I do? And that's where this practice comes in. Well, there comes a point where there is nothing else you can do, and you have to make peace with that and be able to say, I did all I could. Even if I read all night, I'm not going to cure what's going on. But what I can do for myself is take on this practice, which we're going to get into, and then be able to compartmentalize everything in your life and give it grace so that you don't go crazy, so that you can also wake up the next day and do it all over again without being in autopilot, but also doing it with this state of consciousness, right?
Yeah,
showing up
present
for your dad in the right way and actually learning the lessons along the way and being able to show up, with presence. How would you describe Stoicism to someone who has no idea what it is?
Yeah, I think we'll get into it in more detail with perception and control and controlling what we can and what we can't. That's just the most foundational thing. And that's exactly what I was, probably trying to do when I was waking up and reading those things, was, controlling something I couldn't. But I'd say it's a practical guide to not only live well, but to die well, because it's all about, if we're pursuing virtue every day. I mean, there's the four cardinal virtues of wisdom, justice, temperance, courage, if we're pursuing those things and these other subcategories that I've identified in the book, then we're going to basically reduce our anxiety, reduce regret in our life, because we're going to dedicate, so much more attention to the things that really matter. We're going to not worry about the things we can't control, like, what got us here in the first place or where it's going to go. We have so much uncertainty, right? Worrying about what other people, think of us. There's so many things like that.
Since I started reading your book, I mean, it sounds so simple, right? But if you can integrate into your life just the basic concept of it, being stuck in traffic. This morning, I was 5 minutes later than I intended to be. You can either sit in traffic and get so upset, or you just make peace with the fact that I'm going to get there. When I get there, Dave is going to understand. It's 5 minutes. It's not going to change anything. It's simply that. I'm doing all I can. I'm sitting in my car. My foot's on the pedal. I'm going where I need to go. And that's it. But how do people not know this innately?
Well, I think we're basically under assault from things that are pulling us off of that path of virtue. And I think these are all such commonsensical things, but it's it's wild just how common sense is, uncommon now. And I think there are ways of anchoring these things into our lives. Like each chapter in the book, I think there's an overarching approach to integrate these things, right? So I kind of think of it as there's 3 steps. It's the Stoic pause, like just slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how you're thinking about this problem, this challenge, sitting in traffic, or your kids misbehaving in the restaurant, or something more dramatic as you're losing somebody in your life or something like that. So slow down and audit your thoughts. Think about, is this under my control? Is this not under my control? And then anchor it into your routine. So making all of these things routine, I think, is critical. So, I mean, I have like 5 or 6 alerts in my phone a day, in addition to my, 10 meetings I have for work and everything else going on. Just a quick reminder, like, hey, it's late in the afternoon. It's the evening before bed when my kids are going crazy, and all of a sudden they get a second burst of energy, don't want to go to bed. Be present with them. Enjoy this. This isn't a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great thing. This is
Right.
something you should be enjoying and cherishing. Like when you get older, you kill to have this moment again with your kids.
You're so right. The other day, Nikki's in the kitchen and it's like almost 10 o'clock. They need to be in bed and he wants a piece of salami. So many things wrong with this, right? But I paused in the moment and I said, my child right now is showing me his character. He's showing me something I'm not going to see if I'm rushing him to bed. What am I going to get out of rushing him to bed an extra 5 minutes earlier? Really, what is it? Stop. Enjoy your child. It's a moment. And really all they want is to be heard and to be felt, right? So that let them get it out. They're still going to go to bed. But it's that pause and reactivity, non-reactivity, I think, that is a game changer in life. It's not something I grew up with. I was reactive to everything. But when I was, and mine came more through the spiritual lens, studying Kabbalah, it also teaches you the power of pause. And I see similarities in that when you think of the wisdom of Stoicism. Just stop and don't believe everything you're thinking. And you don't have to react to everything.
I think it flips your perspective on almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from embracing the moment to being grateful, right? So there's a chapter on gratitude in there. So we have so much to be grateful for. The Stoics, like the challenges we face in life, they would say they would pity those who didn't have these big challenges because you'll never know who you are, right? Like, so you have this opportunity to find out what you're really made of. You're faced with this tough situation. Like, are you going to step up or are you going to fold? Are you going to kind of wilt and not really perform and be there for the people who really need you? So these are all opportunities. Like the meltdown in the restaurant, it's your kid is learning something. It's something for you. You're learning. You have personal growth, and like, how are you going to handle this situation? Right. How are you going to model your behavior for them? That's a massive opportunity. I think about this this like 2.5 years. It was, at times it was excruciating to deal with this. But it also meant I had 2 extra years of downloading his wisdom. And I was so lucky to have a guy, number one, he kept his cognitive function and was fully there and like fully engaged. And he's this crazy, positive, unbelievable person who's waking up smiling every day, no matter how much pain he's in, any of that kind of stuff. So this is an amazing opportunity I have, no matter there's challenges, of course. But that's extra time with him. And that's extra time he has with his grandkids that he wouldn't have otherwise had. And I remember actually during this period, I had, I was renting the property up in Ohio. I was managing the property down here. And so I got a place that was equidistant between school, between home. So I could take care of him because it was just a little too much for the kids to take. It was too traumatic to have in the house. He went from 170, 180 pounds, vibrant guy traveling Europe with his buddies, down to like 100 pounds. Like just the progression was really fast and really dramatic. So, but we had these nights, right? So I had practices for my kids twice a week or 3 times a week for like the home ed men, the RROT stuff. So that Monday night, my son would come and sleep over. So it was sleepover nights over at my dad's house. And those were some of the most amazing nights because he could come into the room. My son would come back into the bedroom. He'd be in his medical bed or whatever, but he'd be beaming. He'd be so happy to hear about his day. How did practice go? What'd you work on at practice today? How you doing at school? And the kids would just be so excited to talk to him. And those were just like priceless moments. So it's either, are you going to be upset and sad that you're in this situation and mope and whatever, or are you going to like recognize these are like amazing, beautiful moments that you have and you're lucky to have?
I mean, those are transformative moments. And you don't know what your children are taking from that. But oftentimes people get sucked into victimhood. They think, why me? Why do I have to wake up and have all these things that I now have to deal with? And they get so stuck in the negativity that they miss those moments. And that's really what life is. Life is not showing up to punish you. It's showing up to show you what's right there, real life, things that are intangible but are so necessary for our growth.
And frankly, we're modeling a lot of stuff, whether we know it or not, for our kids. So how are you going to deal with this challenge? They're watching, they're learning everything and every reaction we have. One practice I don't want to forget is this journaling practice with Stoicism. I think it's highly encouraged, and it's been a game changer for me, probably starting at the beginning of this, 2.5 years or whatever, because it makes you accountable for your behavior throughout the day. Because I think we do a lot of things unknowingly. We're totally on autopilot, like you said.
We're not self-aware.
Oh my God. So, but if we start journaling and writing these things down, we are accountable at the end of the day. So before I raise my voice with my kids, or before I do this, or if I'm not really like pushing hard at work or pushing hard in my exercise or whatever it is, I'm gonna have to write that down at the end of the day. Like, what did I do well? What did I do poorly? And it's massively helpful.
Yeah. What's something you learned from your dad in that 2.5 year span?
Oh man. So the combination, I think, of, acquiescence, there's this, I don't know how it worked exactly, but he was both acquiescing to his situation, knowing there were things that were out of his control, getting to the perception and control thing. So he was fighting and he was positive and we were doing what we could, but there were points where it was like, this is okay. I'm not going to, kick and scream over what's happening right now. I'm going to make the best of this situation. Yes, he would, tell the nurses like, yes, I have this pain, or I can't move, my legs aren't working. It's like things are happening. He would communicate what he needed to, but he didn't, there was no victimhood. It was, it's hard to fathom how he did this. Every morning I woke up either on the floor next to him based on whatever was happening at what stage, or coming from the other room. And I would walk in there and he'd be smiling like, how you doing? He's like, I'm good. I knew he wasn't good, right? Or even like we'd be in, you're working, catheters, Hoyer lifts, like you're literally lifting him out of bed with like a sling or whatever. And we just could kind of like chuckle at each other. He was maintaining a sense of humor through this situation. And he's just so inspirational. So basically as I was putting notes together for the book, it wasn't just, here's what I got out of Epictetus, or here's what I got out of Seneca or Phil Jackson or whatever. It was what I was watching every day. This guy, whether he knew it or not, he was modeling each of these Stoic principles. He was grateful for what he had every morning, every day. He was letting go of what he couldn't control. The uncertainty with this thing was crazy. He went from minutes to hours to weeks to months to we don't know. So we never really knew, despite, seeing the decline. He didn't let that get him down, right? So everything, just every Stoic principle you could think of, he was modeling. So that's what I got out of it.
Where do you think he got that from? Was it just innately part of his character?
I've met maybe a couple of people in my life like him. My brother-in-law, I'll put it out there, is one of these saintly type people. Like, I never seen him get angry. I don't know how people do it. I've only met a couple of people like this. Maybe his character he's a Midwest guy. He's from Indiana. He grew up in really challenging circumstances. They were I visited the house that he grew up in. It's if you could call it a house, a tiny little place. They would huddle together in one room in a bed to stay warm, the whole family. Humble circumstances, really hard work, I don't know, maybe that Midwestern kind of work ethic. He had an amazing life, right? Like he had big ambitions growing up in a tiny little farm town in Indiana to be a scientist, ended up being this world-renowned oceanographer, physicist, traveled the world, did all these great things. I don't know, maybe he had no real regrets. Like he did everything he could, the best he could when he could.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Some people are born that way, maybe. I certainly have to work at it.
This reminds me of my grandmother on my mother's side. She died at 96 a few years ago. And I always felt that she had that very calm sort of, everything's going to be fine. Everything is fine. She would read a lot. And so I think it's because her mind was so occupied that she didn't react to a lot of things. And she lived through some very challenging situations. I mean, war, relocation from Russia to Armenia, having a child with difficulties later in life, but she kept her composure. And I think sometimes when people think of Stoicism, the misconception is that it's emotional suppression. How would you describe it? And what do you think are the misconceptions of Stoicism?
Not at all. Yeah. So we hear Stoic and we think this,
Stoic,
you don't let anybody know how you're feeling inside. Not at all. We're embracing these things. We're just flipping them on their head a little bit. Yes, it's normal to have anger. It's just pausing and what are you going to do with that anger? The anger's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The emotion is completely fine and natural. It's the next step.
How do you transform it?
Exactly. So if you go back to like the founders, if you want to get into like ethics, physics, and like those really nitty gritty kind of drier subject areas, that's where they would kind of separate those things is like, when is the first reaction and is it okay to have that impulse? And what it really boils down to is it's absolutely right and normal and healthy to have all these emotions and reactions. The change comes in how we react to those things. What do we turn them into?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do we really turn those things into opportunities?
So how does someone do that? I mean, we can't go into the nitty gritty because I don't think anyone has time in their day. But if you could give some tangible tips on how to pause a moment and control our reaction to things.
I think it has to become, I always say that good habits are hard to break, just like bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely true. So whether it's eating or exercise or your behaviors, these are things that we have to absolutely build into our routines. So get your routine together. Start out with a Stoic intention in the morning. Start out when you wake up, whether that's putting an alert on your phone or something by your bedside or something like that. Go to it first thing in the morning to set your intention for the day. I'd advise put something in for midday and for journaling at night. So I can get away from it occasionally, but if you can set those routines throughout the day,
mm-hmm.
set those reminders, they will become natural.
Right.
So again, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? I have to remind myself, all the time, like slow down. My kids will drive me up the wall sometimes, but just to slow down, embrace the moment, take a minute, pause, breathe. I mean, there are breathing techniques I think can be super helpful. I have in the book, the 4-2-6 method I think is super helpful as you're getting pissed off. It's just, so you don't have to go full Wim Hof, right? Because there's all kinds of very extreme breathing
mm-hmm.
things that I think are also pretty cool. But 4-2-6, just breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 2 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds. You'll have, whether it's the dopamine or whatever's going on, you're going to naturally calm down.
Right.
And so your reaction is going to be softer. I use it all the time. I have my daughter use it. I have, my son doesn't really need it. He's a pretty cool
Vaughn
customer.
Vaughn is a really chill kid.
Yeah. It's funny. My daughter and I are very similar. So I work with her on these things because,
mm-hmm.
We're pretty hot-blooded. We can we have a temper, but we take responsibility and we're sorry and all that stuff. So,
see, you say you're hot-blooded and you have a temper, but I've known you for a few years. I've never seen that.
Yeah, everybody's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a nice guy and things can build and I'll take a lot, and then bang. So I have to be careful for that flash to bang scenario so I don't overreact to things that I've been letting people get away with stuff for too long.
So the book is called The Stoic Cheat Sheet. What are some cheat sheet ideas if we want to, like the basic principles of Stoicism?
Oh, this is great. Okay, so cheat sheet stuff. So I think let me pick equanimity to start with, right? So I love the concept of equanimity, basically calm in the face of chaos. This is great for parents. It's great for coaches. Coaching, I absolutely love coaching. I get to coach at the kids' school. I coach their home ed stuff. And I tell them a lot of times, like picture, and people have had put this out there before. I think it's great. Picture just a big rock sticking out of the ocean. The waves keep crashing over it, crashing into it. You want to be that rock. You're unmoved by this. You find that you have what it takes to just weather these things and stay calm no matter what it is. We don't get too high in a game. We don't get too low. We stay somewhere in the middle. So how do we get there? There's a few little techniques I like. I think, voluntary discomfort is a good one. That's pretty popular these days, whether that's I do the plunge. We did
Lean
the whole
into
plunge
the discomfort,
thing.
Right.
Lean into it because it's going to show you you're capable of so much more than you think. Like wake up in the morning. I do it probably 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes I'm better at it. Sometimes I'm worse at it. Sometimes I'll go 2 weeks in a row every day. And then I'll take like days off. But if you wake up in the morning and you kick your own ass and you're like, well, that was pretty hard. Now, going on this podcast or, this meeting at work or this coaching session or this difficult conversation I have to have with somebody, it's a lot easier if you've already been in like 40-degree water for a few minutes. Everything seems easier. Routine. I think routine is really helps reduce anxiety and helps you find equanimity. When you have routine, you have far less stuff to worry about, right? So you have less uncertainty in your day. I'm going to wake up, and it can be boring, and maybe it's not for everybody. I'm going to have this breakfast. I have this workout routine. I have this time with my kids set aside. Routine can make you a lot, more calmer in the face of stuff.
Uncertainty, yeah.
Yeah, and then trusting the process is kind of a sports one, right? This is the old Nick Saban.
You wrote about that in the book, and I highlighted it, trusting the process, which is hard to do, but it's incredible when you see how, the miracles or progress just unfolds when you simply trust the process.
Yeah. And again, a lot of these things are commingled, right? So that's also not worrying about things you can't control. It's perception and control. But for kids, say in sports, it's just one play at a time. It's one movement at a time. Winning and losing is going to take care of itself. But if we can stay present in that very, drill, that very part of the drill, it's all going to add up. If we have attention to detail, it's going to add up to good things. Win or lose, it's going to be good.
Yeah, you wrote about in the book, focus on the consistency and the practice, not the scoreboard.
100%. Yeah, and that's so important for kids. And not to get off topic, but understanding that your priorities in life, it isn't always winning and losing. And a lot of people out there watching probably have kids in sports and AAU, the American Athletic Union stuff. I think people have gotten far off track from that, and they're far more focused on winning and where's my kid going to go to school, and is he going to play in high school and college and all this stuff. When really the lessons are,
it's in the journey.
It's in the journey, and it's who you're going to be when you come out of sports, who you're going to be when you come out of school. That's far more important than, did you win this silly tournament this weekend? Nobody cares. What people care about is what kind of a young man or a young woman you're gonna be. Are you gonna be kind? Are you gonna be gracious? Are you gonna be thoughtful? Way more important.
Right. The experience and the gift after that is who you become in the process. It's not the trophy, because the trophy is irrelevant.
Yeah. No. 100%. There's a chapter on humility as well. Another, there's the concept of 2 ears, 1 mouth, like listening more. I think I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. We want to talk. We want to get our stuff out there, and we're not truly listening to the people that we're talking with. I think that's super important. And there's a couple of interesting stories with that too, right? Like if we're not really listening, or if we're not really paying attention, then we're missing quite a bit. There's a story of, I guess this is again like judging less and listening more. There's a story of like the guy is going down the river in a boat. another boat slams into him and he starts screaming and cussing and freaking out. And he looks over, the boat's empty. Like, just relax, reserve judgment, listens, observe the situation a little bit more. And, things are going to probably not be as bad as you think they are.
Yeah. And also surrendering the finish line concept, right? There was this book that I read. It looked at a study of soldiers at war. One group, they knew when they were going to go home, and the other group didn't. But the group that didn't know when they were going to go home had to surrender the idea of when they're going to go home or if they're going to go home. And they actually were happier than the soldiers who knew they had a finish line, who knew they had an end date, because they were so obsessed with looking forward to it that they were missing the journey and the becoming of what this experience is teaching them.
Right. Yeah. So they couldn't actually be present. They're just focused on something that's out there that they're looking forward to. Yeah. And it's a good lesson for our kids too,
What's another important pillar of Stoicism?
Oh, let's see. I mean, gratitude. See, these are, I think we could go into like courage. We can go into the four cardinal virtues, but I think I like the subcurrents of like gratitude. We've talked about it a little bit today is like being grateful for your situation, this amor fati concept of not only being grateful for whatever you have, but really embracing it, embracing whatever your fate is, good or bad. And I think that's being grateful for all the great things we have in life. And every morning, like when I take my kids to school, I have our little morning gratitude practice. Like, what are you grateful for? It's my friends. It's our dog. It's, Tommy, my dad, or whoever it is. But being grateful for the bad stuff too. Like, listen, like that stuff is helping me grow. These things are actually great things that are happening to us, and we're all becoming better for it. So gratitude is another one. Simplicity, I think, is something that I found is like a concept that's threaded through all of those great Stoic philosophers. Reducing things in your life that you really don't need, it can be really, really freeing, I think, and free up, again, a lot of bandwidth, like simplifying your life. Simplify what you're doing during the day. Like audit, what are you paying attention to during the day? How much social media are people on, right? Like audit how much time you're spending on your apps, how much time you're spending on the phone, how much busy work you're doing that isn't really fruitful. Like what are you really getting out of it? So just simplicity in life.
Right. Less is more.
Less is more material wise too. Like, so we get on this hedonic loop of like, if I just get this car, if I just get this, I don't know what, for women it's jewelry or whatever it is, or like this thing, it's going to make me happy.
It's the shoes, it's the purses, it's all the stuff that we all like. But honestly, none of it matters.
No. And it's on to the next thing. And that's eating up. It's creating this kind of ambient anxiety again, where it's out there in the background. If I just get this, I'm going to be happy. This stuff starts to own you.
Yes.
Right? So I know people that have these gigantic properties and it's like at some point, this is, I think Seneca or somebody said this, it's like your slaves start to own you back in the day, right? So like I have all these different slaves, but now I'm worried about them, messing around with my wife. Now I'm worried about them, stealing wine. Now I'm worried about them doing these things. Right. And this anxiety of worrying about my slaves, I see it like I've got to worry about my property. I've got to worry about the house I have here, or, the car payments, or
bigger life, bigger problems.
That's right. And so it starts to own you. So just simplify things and just think about what you really need.
Absolutely. And I think it's getting down to the essence of the thing, right? You should focus on the joy of the moment, the joy of the experience.
Experiences.
It's not everything else. The essence is what we should focus on. And everything else is just the extras. And what can you reduce so that you can actually experience it? Getting rid of the noise, getting rid of the algorithm, getting rid of everything that isn't giving you that real experience.
That's right. Yeah. And frankly, I think we have like all of these billion-dollar industries just hacking away at us every day. And they're just so sophisticated. It's only going to get worse with AI is already, doing a great job of targeting, our psychological triggers to put us into the hedonic loop and keep us there and keep looking at other people and keep worrying about what other people think of us. So we're up against it. And I think our kids are up against it too.
Right.
And they're going to be up against it in a way that we weren't. Like I was like the lucky generation. Like we didn't have social media in college, thank God.
Right.
I can't imagine what would have come out of that. But yeah, I think we have a lot to deal with in terms of people, industries, companies specifically trying to take us off track and put us in these very, very bad places.
So what are the guiding principles of Stoicism that you live by?
So I think we've been through some of them, right? So I think it's, when we say wisdom, I really associate that with the perception and control idea of let's be smart enough to understand what we can and can't control.
I want to get kind of granular with perception and control for a minute, because I think that is, right, the center overarching theme of Stoicism, which is what can you control, what you can't, and how do you make peace with that?
Yeah, and of course, like this is, there are so many groups that have said similar things, right? So like AA has almost the same thing. Special Olympics has, you start every tournament saying, if let me win. If I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. You have AA has a very similar thing. It's all about externals and identifying what those externals are in our life. And they're just everywhere. They're almost everything that we worry about is completely external, not under our control, whether it's our health, whether it's, a lot of times our finances. Great. Like we should exert control over what we can. We should try to do the best things we can for our kids to educate them, put them in the right schools. But we shouldn't agonize over, are they going to get into an Ivy League school? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Do what you can. Control what you can that day to get them prepared for the day to be a good person. I think it overlaps really well with Buddhism too. Like one thing I'll just as an aside say is what I love about Stoicism is that it's totally complementary with Christianity, with, I guess, Buddhism too, in a lot of ways. I consider myself Christian. I was Irish Catholic, raised in Catholic schools, although I didn't really dig the Catholic schools, but I do consider myself Christian. But it's totally compatible with Christianity and these other beliefs. Buddhism in particular, it aligns with, the Four Noble Truths and the Five Remembrances, right? And so what Buddhism says is that you have, the root cause of suffering is basically we're fighting against things that we can't control. And the true nature of existence is impermanence, right? It's change. And that's the sooner we recognize and come to peace with we cannot hold on to happiness for life. Like it's always going to change. There's going to be good. There's going to be bad.
You can't escape your suffering.
You can't escape suffering. You have to kind of embrace your suffering. That's what Buddhism is teaching us. Embrace your suffering. Embrace everybody's suffering. We're all doing this together. We're all in this thing together. So I think that's fundamental. Yeah.
And I think that, the root of suffering also is believing that we have the control, because we don't. And the only thing that we are responsible for, and this goes back to Kabbalah, because you said that this wisdom complements a lot of religion. Kabbalah is not a religion. It's also spiritual wisdom. It teaches you're expanding your consciousness is the only job you have. So darkness gives you an opportunity to expand your consciousness, to align and to be like the light, to have power over your mind, your thoughts, your emotions. How do you flip it? How do you turn darkness into light? It kind of all ties in together. Unfortunately, the life we're living and the conditioning that we've all endured from the moment that we're born is the opposite.
Yeah, and I think I forget the author, I wish I would remember his name, but a Buddhist monk called this like habit energy that we have. We have this terrible habit energy that we're fighting against. And I think what you said there, maybe that's an even better way to describe Stoicism is it's empowerment. It's empowerment over your life. It's showing you that you actually do have power over how you react to all these things. It's the opposite of trying to control these things. Not trying to control things is a superpower, right? So,
yeah, it's detachment.
Detachment, exactly. You detach yourself from other people controlling how you feel about yourself. I was actually just listening to the podcast this morning, and there's a great Marcus Aurelius quote. It's like, we have massive ego, right? We care about ourselves more than anybody else. But God, we care so much about what other people think of us, and we let that control us. It's bizarre.
Right. When other people are not really thinking about us at all.
They don't care. They don't care. Like, they don't care what you wear. They don't care what you drive. They don't care, any of that stuff. And if they do, like I put in the book, I think somewhere, something to the effect of like, you probably don't want to be friends with these people, or like these aren't probably not the best influences in your life or the best people to be around.
Right.
Because they're not good.
Right. How do you apply this to your work? Because, making a decision for you, it's like, it's not just life or death for one person, because you work in national security. And it's and I know you can't get into it because it's very sensitive, but how do you implement everything that you've learned into that arena where it's like the stakes are unimaginably high?
Well, so I think humility actually is what I think of off the top of my head. So I think one thing that's made me better at what I do is understanding I can't do everything by myself. So delegating, understanding that I've got to get the full use out of my team to help tackle problems and get things done really quickly a lot of times, because we're working across multiple time zones. We've got Far East, we've got Middle East, we've got Europe, we've got North America, South America. We have all these different responsibilities and different AORs, and everything seems to be on fire everywhere all the time, like literally. Right? And everybody's thing is the most important thing to them, which as it should be.
Right.
I think my guy in Indo-PACOM, worrying about what's happening in the South China Sea, his hair is on fire, and this is a huge incident. Good. That's a good thing, and I need to, that's important that he finds it, that we need to get after it like that. But understanding that I have a team, I don't have to do everything myself. I don't have to execute, this full project analysis that has implications, like you said, the strategic recommendations on what to do about this situation. I go to my team for input and advice and their analysis. So being humble enough to know I don't know everything, and I can't be all things to all people. And as our company has grown, as our responsibilities have grown, that's only become more important. Whereas previously I spent like 13 years in the intelligence community where I could burrow into a topic, into PRC cyber or whatever it was. And I could just be academic and I could get into the weeds and then give talks about these things and advice. Things these days, for more on the DoD side of stuff, it's more tactical. It's got to be today. It's got to be this week. And so you've got to make decisions quickly, and you've got to do analyses quickly. And just knowing that you can't do it yourself is one of the most important things I've taken out of this.
And how do you apply it to a marriage? You're married to one of my good friends, and you guys have a beautiful relationship. How do you apply principles of Stoicism in a relationship, especially a long-term one?
I think the first thing we talked about was to pause, slow down. Like if you're having a disagreement, or if like you have a different philosophy on parenting or anything like that, is Stoic pause, number one, and just think about how you're thinking about it. Think about it from their perspective. I always try to put myself in other people's shoes. That's number one. But I put a big chunk of, the gratitude chapter in there about her. I think you have to be grateful for each other and express that. I think you have to be, vulnerable enough to say, of course, I couldn't do what I did for my father without, I know I keep going back to the thing with my father, but I couldn't have done what I did for him or been there for him the way I was, because I was shuttling back and forth from house to house. I would put my kids to bed. I would coach their things. I would do all this stuff, but I would leave at night to go stay with him. And there was many days where there were crises or things that I had to do with him where I just had to leave everything in her hands. And she did so much for me. And so I think gratitude, and there's so many things, like this was just an acute thing that happened over this stretch, but she's done so many great things throughout my life that I have to remember all those things and be grateful for those things. So
yeah, that's really beautiful. You said you would put your kids to sleep and then go be with your dad. How did you find the strength and the energy to do all of that?
It's funny, actually. We have this, human beings are so adaptable, or we have this thing, adaptation, right? And I know there's a lot of adrenaline going at that time, but I had massive purpose with him. my job is purpose for me. I'm passionate about my work. My kids are my number one purpose in life. But he was this, I would wake up every morning with this, like, it's my mission. He was my mission. So I really didn't have too much trouble doing these things. Yeah, emotionally, you hate to see this decline, and like this guy who's been a superhero to you, you're changing diapers. You're taking him in and out of a bed. You're doing all these things that you never want to do. But that's like the most important time to be there. And that's like, this is it. This is time to step up. And there's never a better opportunity to show him how much you love him. So it was never really a challenge. What I think is more interesting is I would tell myself, when this is over, life is gonna be easier but emptier, right? Life is gonna be easier but emptier. But we're human, and it's like all of a sudden, it's like it's gonna be a year in January, right? We find ways to have whatever the latest thing is to be the latest, crisis and problem. Like, I've got this other problem I have to deal with. Well, Jesus, you just did this thing for a couple of years that was so unbelievably challenging, and now this is challenging? Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is not hard.
Who's to say what you're missing out on? Right. Because it's not obligation, it's devotion. And if you can change that mindset, it's like, this might be the most impactful years of my life. And the devotion component is so important, because you're saying that your dad to you was always the superhero. But sometimes we don't see our parents when we're growing up, but we see them in their most vulnerable states. And it's like, now he's available to you in a different way, where you can absorb all the lessons and everything that he stands for. Even as he's declining, he's showing you access to yourself in a completely different way. What would you want people to take away from the book if they're also in a similar situation? Because you and I are at an age where our parents are getting older. So I would imagine a lot of my listeners might be in a similar situation where they're starting to see the decline of their parents in the physical sense. How can they apply some of the principles, tangible principles from the book into these scenarios?
I'm so glad you asked. So, number one, I try not to be whiny in the book, because this is happening to all of us. This is so common. This is not an uncommon thing that happened. There's, I think, 60 million caretakers just kind of suffering in silence a lot of times. So this is not a unique situation whatsoever. And that's one reason I'm partnering with the Caretaker Action Network, which is an amazing group that helps people navigate this caregiving landscape, which is really difficult for a lot of people. I got hit with this kind of, I knew what we were going into with the hip surgery, that mortality rates and this and that. But I think a lot of people are blindsided, and all of a sudden they're in a caregiving situation. So getting in front of it and having a resource like CAN is critically important. So a group like that, number one, can help you navigate healthcare and coverage. That's something that is pretty complicated with finances, what people are have at their as resources for Medicare, Medi-Cal, all that kind of stuff. So understanding what you should expect and shouldn't expect is huge. Self-care, they can help with self-care. I think that's what we're trying to do here with this book as well. Ways to kind of deal with these situations. Decision-making with hospice is another really difficult decision that a group like that can help with. From the book, I think the most practical tools are, just going chapter by chapter. In the back of each chapter, there's a set of practices that you can go through to make sure that you're staying on track, that you are not overwhelmed by things that are not in your control. Building those things into routines like we talked about. Making sure forgiveness, there's a whole chapter on forgiveness in here. So for caretakers, you're not going to do everything right. And you're going to second guess yourself. You're going to feel like, if I would have done this differently, the outcome could have been, better, or I could have done, something differently for a better outcome. So self-forgiveness is a critical part of this book for caretakers. And, caretaking isn't just this acute situation that I encountered. It's part of the reason I wrote this was for lifelong caregivers too. So coaching, I coached Special Olympics for like 15 years. I've like rekindled that with the Hurashk group recently, which is an amazing Home Minute Men led group that I highly encourage people to get involved with. These are people that are dealing with this for a lifetime. So I think the tools in this book can help them as well. It's not just end of life. It's every day for a lifetime, and your child's going to outlive you. And there's a lot to deal with that as well.
Right. It's never too late. Last night, because I do a lot of writing, and my thing with my mom is that I don't let her in enough. So last night I sent her something and I said, Mom, here, you should read it. Because I think it's never too late to truly bring people in and to transform whatever situation is there. And thank you so much. This was so great. I feel like I learned not only so much in just reading your book. I haven't finished it yet. I'm going to. But just in this conversation. And it's so beautiful and surprising when you think you know someone, because we know each other through our kids and through school and through, mutual friends. But it's so nice to see a different layer to someone, because we all have so many layers.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was fun.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Breaking Through with Alina Obervian. For our community to grow, please like and share, and also leave a review on this episode. Of course, you can find me on social media and let me know what you'd like to talk about in future episodes. Nothing is off limits, so let's have some fun.